In France, almost half of the country's rail services have ground to a halt during yet more industrial action over labour reforms to extend working hours and to loosen up pay regulations. Other sectors are also disrupted as the standoff between unions and the government escalates. Workers' unions are giving fresh impetus to the protests, which have been a common sight across major French cities for months now. And while some of them have been largely peaceful, other rallies have seen violence emerge between protesters and police. And it doesn't seem as though a lot of it is particularly spontaneous unrest either, because some of those activists are turning up ready for trouble with the authorities. They're taking helmets to marches, even bricks on occasion as well. Others are carrying flares to set off during the rallies. Many have taken gas masks as well to protect themselves from smoke grenades and from tear gas. On top of that, sticks and bottles are being used in fights, resulting in many injuries along the way. Slogans are being shouted through loudspeakers, some graffitied onto walls. Some protesters are even bringing along copies of the current French Labour Code. That's what they're trying to protect from reform. One of the regular participants of the rallies explains who's behind the clashes and how the police are reacting to them.
I've been involved in street demonstrations for many years now, so I know there have always been groups of people who act aggressively. The police are well aware of this and know how to deal with them. They know how to catch them even before the rallies begin. Some police officers said that this year they were told not to prevent the hooligans from getting involved. When they see such groups, they let them mingle with the peaceful protesters. And they only step in after the hooligans start smashing windows everywhere and the TV crews capture those images, so it's easy to portray the demonstrations as violent. Only then did the police intervene, without making any distinction between the rioters and the peaceful protesters. I got hit by a stun grenade, but I was lucky. Another guy is still in a coma. What is happening right now is unacceptable. I wear a hat for protection. I use a handkerchief and lemon juice to protect myself from tear gas, and I don't wear glasses because the police target people who wear them. One night my girlfriend and I saw a group of hooligans smashing a store window, and for 15 minutes the police did nothing. They didn't intervene. But some guys from the Standing Night movement stepped in and persuaded those people to stop. That was the moment when the police got involved. We returned home and saw that scene on the TV, but the events were portrayed the other way around.
Bonjour.
I'm sick and tired of the people who are running our country. Before we had a right-wing government which took similar measures because that was part of their program. But now we have a socialist government which does not actually follow its left-wing agenda. Everyone who voted for them feels betrayed.
Anastasia Churkin has been to meet protesters from the sit-in movement called Nuit Debout, who say that the government and the police are trying to discredit their peaceful protest.
We're back at Place de la République, where Nuit Debout, the movement which means night on our feet, is assembled for yet another evening of debate. This is a movement that's often been compared to Occupy Wall Street in the States, because they're a peaceful movement with people getting together night after night, often setting up tents such as these ones, some of them dedicated to media, others to gathering donations. There's a logistics tent over there, kitchenette over here, over there, lawyers giving consultations, avocats debout, and this movement has been saying, because of the recent weeks of violence and clashes that we've seen on the streets of France, they have had a big issue with this because of media action and how around the world what is happening in France became associated with the movement. And lots of the guys who are gathered here, whose mission is to really get together and discuss change, social issues, economic issues, but largely to resist the labor law reforms of the government, they're saying they're not associated with the violence that's been taking place on the streets.
We're pacifists. None of us are armed. We don't have batons or tear gas like the police do. We are here to make the world understand that there is oppression in many spheres of society, and there are people who want this to come to an end.
Police violence is a technique the government uses to discredit the movement in the media. The state provokes such situations so people see it in the media.
The government and the police use force against the protesters. That is why we are not able to protest peacefully. And the situation is manipulated by the media.
Despite the media all over the world paying more attention to the violent clashes that have been unraveling on the streets of France between police and protesters, people here at Nuit Debout and really people in Paris and France are saying that's just the tip of the iceberg, because the scope of the social resistance that France now sees is much larger than that. It strikes by unions that have joined in, industry by industry, saying no to the reforms that the government wants. The point is that despite the French government saying that they're going to continue and have these reforms passed, people on the streets are saying the protests will also not end. Anastasia Churkina, RT, Paris.
Other reaction we've been hearing, one French economics professor told Kevin Owen that the French government's the victim of a shift in EU policy.
I think they are stuck in an EU agenda. The EU and especially Merkel want a new flexibility and more flexibility in the labour market. For what reason? So because there are 3 million of immigrants at the border of the Turkish border between Turkish and the European border.
Just to be clear, you're saying this drive is coming from Merkel and from Brussels, or it's coming from Paris, really?
It's a decision from abroad. And the French government, now they are stuck because they have no sovereignty. They lost their sovereignty with the piling of treaties, and maybe it's time to negotiate for people with the government and to face the reality of the social situation in France and even the economic problems.